Hey guys, it's Phantom, and welcome back, or welcome, to another episode of the Ask Phantom podcast. Now, in the last episode of the podcast, I mentioned something about, the importance of learning foreign language, in school, or just in general, the importance of learning foreign language. Not just in school, but in general. Now, it's related to school because foreign language is a requirement. So, let's just talk about that for a bit. Oops. Hold on. I'm sorry, I meant to make it bigger. So, let's just talk about that for a second. Okay. So, let me just say, in my experience, foreign language, in my experience, when I was in school, wasn't exactly, my forte. Now, let's just say I'm very interested in foreign countries and, like, traveling and stuff. My preferred language of choice to learn to speak right now is Swedish. Because it is much easier for me to learn to speak other languages. Not every language is easy to speak. Like, for some people, they might not be good at learning to speak Spanish or learning to speak French or, learning to speak Ukrainian. Also, I want to learn to speak Ukrainian. I want to learn to speak Ukrainian so bad. But Ukrainian language is pretty difficult. Okay, it's an easy language, but, like, if you're first starting out, it's gonna be difficult. Let me just say that. Because I'm trying to learn how to speak Ukrainian. I figured that I'll learn to speak it after I learned Swedish first, obviously, because I feel like Swedish is way easier. Okay, so let me just talk about this for a little bit. So, in school, you have to learn a foreign language. Okay. Like, depending on the country, depending on the country, each place has different foreign languages you can speak. So let me talk about the terms for a second. Some terms that you might see very often if you live in certain countries, like if you live in the States, for example. Yes, I call it the States. So if you live in the States, for example, you could learn 2 or 3 languages. And I mean, like, at school. You can learn whichever language you want to learn. Really, like, outside of school if you wanted to. As well. So you can learn, like, a bunch of different languages. But in schools, mainly, the languages that are available for, like, classes and stuff, as I said, because foreign language is very important when you're in school. It's a requirement it is a requirement, if you're wondering. You can't really get out of it. So, in certain forms of education, and I'm pretty sure lots of other places, it is a requirement to take at least 2 years of foreign language. Because, you might hear someone say, commonly, you might hear someone say, to get certain jobs, you have to learn to speak a second you have to learn to speak a second language. And, yeah, I mean, like, depending on the country, like, let's say if you travel a lot and you go to a bunch of different countries, then it would mainly be like a requirement. You don't have to, but in certain places, like I know in Sweden, I'm learning Swedish, by the way. I learned to speak Spanish. I'm not all that great at Spanish, so I prefer other languages over certain ones, just because it is a preference and it is easier for me. You could be different. You could be different than me, but for some people, it is easier to learn other languages first before you learn to speak a specific language. So in certain places, like let's say you like to travel a lot and you've been to places like Spain or Sweden or or Canada, or maybe you have dual citizenship. Yes, you can have dual citizenship. I will talk about that in like a separate section of the podcast, meaning like probably travel or something like that. I don't know. maybe it's something I want to talk about because it's always interested me. So, anyways, back to what I was saying. Okay, let's see. Depending on the country, they either have that available, for you to learn to speak it, like, for example, they use a lot of terms like, for example, ESL, which is English as a second language, SSL, Spanish as a second language, or in certain places, Swedish as a second language. It depends on where you are from, or if you're like traveling somewhere. Like let's say you go to Sweden, just as an example. Let's say you go to Sweden a lot and you notice that there are a lot of people speaking Swedish, and you're like, I want to learn how to speak Swedish. Or you may have questions like, is it a requirement? Like, if I go to this place, is it a requirement to speak the language? Okay. For example, no, from the research I've done, it's not a requirement to speak Swedish. You don't have to speak Swedish, but you can learn. You can learn if you want to. You don't have to learn to speak Swedish, because there are people in Sweden that speak English. Mainly people in Sweden. I don't know if this is like every Swede or anything like that can speak English, but lots of people in Sweden go between Swedish and English speaking. And if you're wondering how to say English in Sweden, or in Swedish language, you say, it's Engleska. I think I said it right. Yeah, Engleska. That's how you say English in Swedish. And then you say Sweden, svenska. Oh my gosh. Did I mix them up? I think svenska is, yeah, svenska is Swedish for Swedish. And Sweden is, in Swedish, the country is something else. I have to brush up on my Swedish. I haven't been practicing as much. But, yeah, you can definitely learn to speak another language at home if you know, like outside of school, if you would like. As I said, I learned to speak Spanish. I'm not all that great at Spanish. Spanish is a very hard language to learn for some people, myself included. So, I choose to learn to speak other languages first before I go to the hard languages. Okay, so for one, like they have different levels of foreign language. They have different levels of foreign language when you're in school. Certain places only offer Spanish and French. Some places offer, you know, this is depending on the country. I think it varies by country or territory. Some places offer English and French and German and like all those other languages. No, I can't speak German. I cannot speak German at all. So, like a lot of different places offer a lot of different languages to speak, in schools. So, for one, let's see. If you go to Canada, you may see a lot of people speaking French. Now, there's different dialects of languages. There's different forms of a language. Like, as I said, in Canada, if you go to Canada or if you are from Canada, depending on where in Canada you are from, a lot of Canadians, a lot of places in Canada, and a lot of Canadians, probably not every Canadian, I don't know, can speak French. Depending on where you live in, you know, in Canada or where you go to, like let's say if you travel to Canada and you go to some place like Quebec, I think that's how you say it. It's French, so forgive me if I mispronounced anything. If you go to Quebec, yeah, that's how you say it, Quebec. If you go to Quebec, that is a French speaking area. Now, there are differences between Canadian French and I think it's Francois French, or I don't know how to pronounce French in French. I don't know how to pronounce the word French in French, okay? I think it's Francois or something. I don't know, okay? I love the French language, but I don't know if I pronounced French in French correctly. And I'm talking about the language, not the I'm talking about the language. So yeah, there's different dialects of different languages. Like, you know, if you're learning Spanish, you have to differentiate between, you know, the Spanish that is mainly, or the dialect of Spanish that is mainly taught to you in school, which is Spain dialect of Spanish. And then there is the Mexican dialect of Spanish. Just like how there's the Canadian French dialect of French, and the France dialect of French. You have to differentiate between the two. But yes, you, depending on where you are, there are different dialects for different languages. Now, for some people, they may learn the Spanish dialect of not the Spanish dialect, the Spain dialect of a language, like Spanish, for example, and then they hear other dialects of Spanish, and then they may be confused. They may be confused a little bit, which is okay. But yeah, it is very beneficial to learn other languages. One reason why it could be beneficial to learn other languages is that, you may come across people in school that speak another language than you, and you may want to be friends with them, but can't speak, or don't know what language they're speaking, or can't speak the language because you've never been introduced to it. Now, for example, as I said, I'm very interested in foreign countries, and a couple of those countries happen to be Canada, France, Canada, France, Sweden, Ukraine, those are just a couple countries. I'm sure there's more, but for now, that's all I can come up with. And, yeah, so, you may come across somebody that doesn't speak English or something like that, and maybe they just transferred to a new school from another place and they don't know your language. So let's say you want to be friends with someone, for example, and they speak another language than you do. That could be a sign that you want to learn a different language. That you have interest in learning other languages. One way to get comfortable with learning other languages is, like, go to places that are, like, different. Like, go to places locally or something where you can get accommodated and get used to all the signs and stuff. Like, for example, one way I knew that I wanted to learn to speak Swedish was I would go to IKEA a lot. If you don't know what IKEA is, it's a huge furniture. It's a huge warehouse store, warehouse company. It's a store. It looks like it's a store. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, pretty sure it's like a furniture store / like it's a let's just call it a warehouse store or something. I don't know what to call it. Really, I don't know what type of store it would be classified under. So, like, for me to get used to seeing different languages, and kind of learning, I would go to certain places like IKEA, for example, and look at the signs, which were translated from Swedish to English. So, for example, one thing you might see is let's say if you walk into an IKEA, for example, you may see something in Swedish that says hi, which in Swedish, how you say hey or hi in Swedish is hey. Um, so Swedish, how you say hi or hey in Swedish is hey. Um, so that's how you say hi. Like if you ever pass by the like hello sign, if you ever pass by the hello sign in a store like IKEA, it means hello, or it means hi. Yeah, it means hello or hi in Swedish. And they have like a bunch of other signs like for beds, for beds and other types of furniture and all that stuff. So like pay attention to details. Like if you want to learn another language, um, definitely pay attention to details around you, like signs or you know signs or tags or something like that. And then the way that you would pronounce IKEA in Swedish, because it is a Swedish company, um, how you would pronounce it in Swedish is IKEA. Um, okay, there's actually a lot of brands. There's actually a lot of companies that were created by Swedes. IKEA, sorry, it's pronounced IKEA in Swedish. So IKEA, which is IKEA, um, Spotify. Sorry, I'm trying to speak Swedish. So IKEA, Spotify. I think I said it correctly in Swedish. I don't know if I said it correctly. Forgive me. I'm still learning. H&M, which they shortened it to H&M because the the full name of H&M is very difficult to pronounce. As I said, it is Swedish. Sometimes Swedish names are difficult to pronounce, not always, but if they're long, sometimes it may be a bit hard and stuff. So, yeah. Some companies, IKEA, that's Swedish. Spotify, Swedish. Um, Certain bands that you may listen to are Swedish, like ABBA. They are Swedish. They are a Swedish group. Um, yeah, they're Swedish. Um, you know, you may be, you may have interest in, you know, things. You may have interest in things without realizing it. And then you may think, "Oh, I didn't know that this place was based in whatever place it was based in." You may be shocked. You may be like, "Oh, I want to learn this language." And then you realize that you were exposed to that type of thing, like by going to furniture stores or department stores, or places that have the certain space or whatever. So you may not realize this, but in one time or another, you probably were aware that if you pay attention closely to details, you may realize that you were exposed to a different language without realizing it. So in certain restaurants or in stores, or or in meat markets. One thing that I remember hearing. Okay, So if you've ever watched certain films, you may have heard the term, you may have heard certain terms from films, or you may have heard certain terms relating to certain areas of the world. Like, for example, the word smorgasbord is okay. Smorgas means sandwich, and brod means bread. So smorgasbord. Um, Mind you, in movies like Charlotte's Web, it was pronounced smorgasbord. Um, but it's actually pronounced smorgasbord. Um, I know, very confusing, but it means sandwich bread, or or a it's not a charcuterie board. Charcuterie boards and smorgasbords are different. Um, it's basically like a big platter of food. It's very specific. You'll have to look it up for yourself to know what it means. But it's basically okay. Smorgas means sandwich. Smorgasbord means sandwich bread. And or smorgas means sandwich and broad means bread. Sometimes it means sandwich bread. Other times it's referring to like a big platter of, you know, sometimes it's referring to a big platter of bread. Or not a big platter of bread, a big platter of assorted foods. Um, and then one thing you may be familiar with if you've ever tried it would be like things like certain foods, like, you know, meatballs, or meatballs, or let's say, what is it? Or an open-faced sandwich. In certain countries, it's very common to see open-faced sandwiches. They actually look really, really good. I've always wanted to try an open-faced sandwich. Always. Now, in certain places, the food looks very different. So, like certain places they have open-faced sandwiches, whereas in the States you have closed-faced sandwiches. Which is what, so closed-faced sandwiches, the differences between those are, you put bread on top. You put bread on top. With an open-faced sandwich, you don't do that. But yeah, you can definitely learn other languages. And some apps that I recommend are, like there's a lot of apps I recommend actually. Let's see. Duolingo is one. italki is another one. Okay, I guess I could like look it up and show you. I'm going to use Swedish as an example because that's the language that I'm learning. So that is the language I am learning. Swedish. Or I guess like foreign language apps or something. But like I'm learning to speak certain languages. So, like, I'm learning to speak Swedish, so apps. So there's like a bunch of apps you could use to learn to speak another language. So let's look here. Hold on, let me find the mouse. Okay, so let me go ahead and do that. Okay. So we got this. All right. So let me show you some foreign language apps that you could use to learn to speak other languages if you choose to. You don't have to, but it's really good to learn to speak other languages. Like, as I said, in high school, like when you're in school, especially when you get to high school, or the upper grades, they expect you to learn foreign language, because in certain places it is a requirement to learn foreign language, to go to further on in your education. So some language learning apps that are good to use are Memrise, which I don't use that one. Lingual Lift, gotta check that one out. Rosetta Stone, I'm pretty sure everyone has heard of Rosetta Stone. Like, they're everywhere. I'm not even joking. They're everywhere. Duolingo, which is what I use. Hello Talk, Mind Snacks, Busu. I think I said that right. And then Babbel. There's also more like italki, which is okay, so there's more than that. There's also apps for language tutors like italki, which you have to pay for. Is it worth it? Of course it is. Do you have to do it? No. But let's turn off window capture and let me show you what I'm talking about. So I watched a ton of videos when I was, learning to speak Swedish and learning about Ukrainian language. Some people say Ukrainian language, some people say Ukrainian. Okay, Ukrainian is a little bit difficult because, okay, so when you learn a different language, you have to learn to write in that language. You have to learn to speak in the language. You have to learn to do everything in that language if you're learning that language. Especially the writing style and whatnot. I feel like Ukrainian, if any of you want to learn Ukrainian, go for it. But Ukrainian language is very complicated because, well, it's not that complicated, but they have different writing styles than what you would see. So, like, if you see Ukrainian language in cursive, it literally scared me the first time I saw Ukrainian language, or the first time I saw Ukrainian cursive. First time I saw Ukrainian cursive, it scared me because I had no idea that's how Ukrainian cursive looked, until I watched a couple videos on Ukrainian language and how everything worked. So, let's see here. I'm gonna use Swedish as an example, obviously, but I also found a good channel, a good YouTube channel, for like if you want to speak Ukrainian, or if you want to learn to speak Ukrainian. Okay, so just look up YouTube. Let's see here, YouTube. Okay, so I'm gonna use Swedish as an example, obviously. Shoot. Okay, I'm gonna use Swedish as an example here. So I'm sorry, I keep accidentally pressing things. All right, so I'm gonna use Swedish as an example because that's one of the languages I'm learning. And then after I learn to speak Swedish, I want to learn to speak Ukrainian. I don't know why. As I said, I'm very fascinated with foreign language, etc. Learn to speak Swedish. Swedish. You could also learn how to speak Swiss German if you want. So, so there's this one channel, Catherine Berndt. So there's a couple of channels that I watch. I think it's Slow Speaking Swedish. Okay, so Slow Speaking Swedish. Slow Swedish. There's a lot of channels that I watch that are done by Swedish YouTubers or Swede YouTubers, that are done by Swedes. So one channel that I recommend, I'm sure they have like podcasts and whatnot. They have loads of podcasts if you want to learn that way. Also, but if you want to learn to speak certain languages, like for example Swedish or any other language, or let's say you're taking Spanish and you need a little bit of help, or like you're not the best Spanish speaker or something like that, you could learn by watching. You could learn by watching and by doing. So, okay. Yes, I get it. Spanish can be a very difficult language, or learning foreign language can be very hard. I get it. But like, people learn differently. Not everybody may learn in like a classroom type of setting. As I said, there are apps to help you learn foreign language, and use those to your advantage. Don't use things like dictionaries, especially if you're taking a class. Don't use things like dictionaries because maybe the teacher or the professor might not like that. Okay, so one channel, that I recommend if you're learning to speak Swedish, If you're learning to speak Swedish, I recommend this channel, Slow Swedish with Katrin Berndt. And then they have videos, and then they have videos with like, with Slow Swedish videos, and then they have a video, Fika with Lisette and Katrin, from last year, and then they have another one. They have another video here, Fika with Lisette and Katrin, introduction, Slow Swedish with subtitles. Okay, and then they have, and there's a channel, Slow Swedish, Say It in Swedish, from Say It in Swedish, and then another channel, Learn Swedish with SwedishPod101.com. I'm very familiar with this channel. I've seen a couple videos with them. And then here's another one, Breakfast Mukbang, Slow Swedish with subtitles. And then here's another one. Okay, some that I recommend are, like, let's say if you want to learn to speak Swedish. If you want to learn to speak Swedish and you are a visual and auditory learner, like me, for example, not everyone is a visual and auditory learner. I would recommend people like Katrin Berndt, Learn Swedish with Swedish Pod, and then Katrin Berndt. And then Katrin Berndt's main channel, I recommend that one. And then, like, she has a video called Learn How to Curse in Swedish. If you're wondering, that is Swedish. And then, maybe you might want to learn Norwegian, or Norwegian. I think I said it right the second time. Norwegian. Norwegian. Okay, it sounds like there's an R, another R. It sounds like there's two R's, but there's a W there. Okay. So, let's look up Swedish-speaking YouTubers for an example. So I know Katrin Berndt has helped me learn to speak Swedish more. She's someone who has helped me, or her videos have helped me. Swedish speaking YouTubers. Dang it, I cannot spell, I'm sorry. YouTubers. Okay, so Katrin Berndt is good. There's this channel right here that I watch sometimes. Actually, there's a lot of people on YouTube that are actually Swedish, and you may not know. You may not know that they are based in, not always based in Sweden, but some YouTubers that you may watch are Swedish and you may not realize it. Like PewDiePie is Swedish. A lot of people know that PewDiePie is Swedish, but Um, a lot of people know that PewDiePie is Swedish, but maybe new people who watch his content might not know that. Oh my gosh, what's this one channel that I watch? I think it was What My Voice Sounds Like, or What My Swedish. I can't remember. What My Swedish Sounds Like a year after living in Swedish. Or after living in Sweden, sorry. What my Swedish sounds like a year after living in Sweden. What's my Swedish sounds like a year after living in Sweden, I think. Yeah, living in Sweden. Yeah, I cannot remember what the video was. So I will look it up and I will pause it. I will pause it and look it up and see if I could find it. I don't think I'll be able to find it, but I'll try. Oops. Okay, so sorry this podcast is so long. But yeah. Okay, so another channel that has helped me besides Katrin Berndt, and slow speaking Swedish, with Katrin Berndt. Another channel that has helped me with my Swedish is Learn to Speak Swedish Fast. And then there's other channels that could help. I think I watched this video before. How to Speak Swedish. I saw this video called, saw this video called Learn Swedish While You Sleep. And then obviously, again, learn Swedish with Swedish 101 with SwedishPod101.com. There's podcasts you can watch or listen to help you speak Swedish or just help you speak a different language. As I said, I'm using Swedish as an example because it is the language that I am learning. Why am I learning Swedish? Well, it's because I am fascinated with it's because Sweden is one of my favorite countries, one of my favorite foreign countries. I have a lot of favorite foreign countries, actually. But yeah, there's like loads of videos. I'm not gonna play them because, I don't want to, but those are just some examples of videos you could watch. If you're learning to speak Swedish, for example, you could learn to speak other languages too, like Ukrainian. Okay, and then another one. here is a channel that helps you learn Ukrainian if you are learning to speak Ukrainian. Ukrainian language. Oops, I can't. Ukrainian language. Ukrainian language. Okay. So, and then there is this channel called Speak Ukrainian, that I watch sometimes. And then there's one called Ukrainian language. Then there's a channel called 21 Languages. There's a video of it called Learn Ukrainian for Beginners. Most important words and phrases in Ukrainian. So it's part English. So they're speaking part English and part Ukrainian. And then there's a video. Then there's a video called 7 Benefits of Learning Ukrainian. Counting Ukrainian. Cardinal numbers. So yeah. Just letting you know here, that when you learn a new language, like, okay, when you learn a new language fully, if you want to fully learn a new language, you have to learn to speak, you have to learn to speak the language, you have to learn to write in the language, you have to learn, numbers and colors and how to say months and how to tell time in that language. Like if you travel, you have to learn how to get around, and whatnot. Like you have to learn. Okay, for example, this channel, Speak Ukrainian, has videos on everything. From how to say words in Ukrainian, how to write in Ukrainian, the numbers in Ukrainian, the numbers in Ukrainian, the colors in Ukrainian, like everything in Ukrainian. Like they have a playlist for Ukrainian songs, Ukrainian cases, Ukrainian phonics, Ukrainian food, essential Ukrainian vocabulary, tips for learning Ukrainian. Yeah, they have a lot that could definitely help. And then there's more playlists here. Ukrainian dialogues for beginners, collaboration with students, Ukrainian language lessons, basic Ukrainian grammar, Ukrainian podcasts. There's loads of ways you could learn a language, from podcasts to apps. Duolingo is good. Duolingo is really good. I love using Duolingo to learn Swedish. I want to learn Ukrainian so bad, but I'm like, I don't know. I'm very fascinated by Ukrainian language. I don't know what it is, but I'm very, very fascinated by Ukrainian language. And why am I saying it like that? Because that is how you say Ukrainian in a Ukrainian accent, or in a Ukrainian English accent. That is how you say Ukrainian, or Ukraine. So they have different types of accents in certain places depending on where you go. Like the people there may not sound like they have an accent, but, you know, because they're used to it. So you may not sound like you have an accent, but to people in other places of the world, like, I've heard in some places that people say that Americans have an accent, which we do. We don't hear it though. We don't hear it in ourselves though. But you know, we don't hear it in ourselves though, but like, we've been told that Americans have an accent, or Europeans have an accent. You know, like, we all have accents. We just don't hear, you know, we just don't hear them when we talk. Because it's normal for us, you know, it's normal for us. So yeah, I'd suggest like looking at YouTube channels, podcasts, getting apps. You can get italki as well, if you want. You can get italki. Italki is an app for tutoring, for language tutoring, and whatnot. So that could help as well. So yeah. There are plenty of ways you could learn a language. Podcasts, YouTube, you know, podcasts, YouTube, Duolingo, all those apps. They may not all work for you, but there are a lot of apps that can help with that. Duolingo is one of my personal favorites. Before we... Sorry, I have the hiccups. You have to forgive me. So, one service that helps me is Duolingo. So Duolingo helps me out so much. Duolingo. So I have the Duolingo app, but I don't use the website. This is what the website looks like. You know, you could... So this is what the Duolingo website looks like if you choose to use Duolingo. If you choose to use Duolingo to learn a language, and you either want the app or the website, you can do both. This is what the app looks like. Well, not the app. This is what the website looks like. The app looks so different. The app looks... Oh my gosh. The app looks different. I am sorry, word vomit. And then you would click get started, or I have an account. So, let me turn this off because I don't want you seeing. And then you could like log in with your Google account or Facebook, or just log in regularly. So, you know, you can use the app, which is what I use. And this is what, and for an example, this is what the Swedish page would look like. As you can see, so you could probably tell here, Not doing too hot. Not doing too hot because I messed up like 3 things on my chart here. It's like 3 things on my chart here, but this is an example of what this is an example of what the Swedish page would look like. You could learn a bunch of different languages. So as you can see, I'm not doing too hot. I missed like 3 things, but yeah. But I'm doing pretty good. Although I missed like 3 Although I missed like 3 things because I wasn't practicing. That's what could happen when you don't. That's what could happen when you don't practice. Um, it's literally what could happen when you don't practice. Um, they break or they crack. They look like they crack. See, so like, okay, you can't see because I turned it off, but I messed up basics 1 and basics 2 and phrases. And it's golden because I passed those parts. And so I'm on, I'm on food, and then after that I have animals, and then definitions and plurals and parts of speech, pronouns, and all that. And then you move on to, okay, so I'm pretty sure this is like I'm pretty sure this is like level 0, and then this is level 1. So level 1 has, okay, so for example, this is like all level 0, so they have it in levels. So they have it in levels here. So this is level 0. So you can see I already messed up a little bit. This is level 1. So level 0, basics 2, and then phrases, and they have food and animals and definitions and plurals and parts of speech and pronouns and objectives, or I think it's objectives. I think it's pronouns and objectives. And then for level 1, they have like clothing and verbs and colors and questions and prepositions and time and family, and then they have jobs and adjectives and verbs and adverbs and places and objects and people and travel, determine and numbers and present education. Present verbs, education, and then level 3, verbs past, informal verbs, geography, or maybe it's, yeah, maybe the V means verb, I'm pretty sure. And then geography, food, and past verbs, and or whatever the V stands for in this sense. Then feelings, abstract stuff, and more adjectives, and more present stuff, and animals, and all that, and imperative stuff, future, past, tense pronouns, and then it just continues. Then it just continues to level 5, which we don't know what level 5 is yet. Okay, so level 5, okay, so these are all checkpoints. These are all checkpoints you have to go through that they have. So I'm almost done. I just have to go through these and fix them and do all that. And they have checkpoints. And they have checkpoints. And once you get to checkpoint number 5, Oh my gosh, they have spiritual stuff. I'm so interested in that. Okay. And then they have like 5 checkpoints and stuff. You can't just like skip the checkpoints. You can't just skip the lessons and go to the checkpoints without finishing everything first. So I'd recommend doing all the checkpoints first and then, you know, do that. So yeah, that's pretty much how it would be like if you use Duolingo. I totally recommend it. It's definitely helpful. It's so helpful. So yeah, with that said, I'm gonna end this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, if you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to leave a like, comment, and please subscribe to the Ask Phantom podcast channel or the Ask Phantom channel. Both. You could subscribe to both, it's fine. And then, you know, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts from or whatever. And yeah, that's pretty much it for this podcast episode. I hope you guys enjoyed, and goodbye, guys. I'm going to practice my Swedish because I have fallen pretty behind, so I'm gonna do that until I decide to do other stuff.